Do as I say, not as I do, the prerogative of the hypocrite through the ages. Research by The Times reveals that the supposed young activists are doing less to reduce their carbon footprint than older Britons. They're less likely to recycle, reduce flights and take steps to save water. The one thing that young people do more of than their elders is they eat less meat. However, giving up your Sunday roast beef won't make much difference. Whereas our retired Britons are 3 times more likely to install energy-saving measures in their homes, perhaps because they pay their bills. So are the Thunbergs of the younger generation being overtaken by our pensioners for economic rather than virtue-signalling reasons? Well, joining me now is James Skeet, spokesman from Just Stop Oil. James, thank you very much for coming. It's nice to see you.
Lovely to chat to you.
Obviously, Just Stop Oil is campaigning to encourage young people to take this up.
No, what we're calling for is no new licences or consents for any fossil fuel exploration in the UK.
OK, but you're more than that, aren't you? You are worried about the climate emergency, as you call it, and when spokesmen have come on before, their concern has been about young people and protecting the young. So
I think it's all people, really, Jacob. I think this affects you as much as anyone else. All
right. One of your predecessors who came on said that her concern was for my children, and so I just wonder why you think it is that it's the older generation that seems to be doing more in terms of the environment than the younger generation. Is it just political apathy amongst the young?
I think that there's a bit of a sort of classic GB News culture war framing here, to be honest, Jacob, because like what you're doing is sort of playing the young against the old, and while we're busy sort of talking with each other and getting distracted, that shows that we're not paying attention to this government that's gone ahead with licensing over 100 new fossil fuel projects, licensed Rosebank that's going to be emitting the emissions of 28 whole countries. And I was trying to figure out why it is that there's so much money coming into GB News, you know, considering all the scandals, like all the sort of sexual misconduct that seems to be being undertaken by your presenters. And then I saw today that GB News' owner, his hedge fund is invested in $2.2 billion in oil and gas. And do you think that potentially that a so-called news organisation that has investments to the tune of $2.2 billion in oil and gas might have a bit of a vested interest in manipulating the truth around oil and gas?
I have no investments in oil and gas.
I'm not talking about you, but you work for an organisation that's got $2.2 billion investments in oil and gas.
Your point on exploration is a completely bogus one, because actually everyone accepts we're going to be using oil for the foreseeable future and gas, and that 2050 is net zero, not absolute zero, and that the emissions from
and 73% of Tory voters want
the emissions from our own resources are lower than those from resources that we import. This is partly
actually, 80%, as you well know, 80% of oil and gas is sold on the international market,
yes,
so it does absolutely nothing for our energy security, does it, Jacob? In fact, the best thing that we can do for energy security is to get off oil and gas. You know that, don't you?
You're answering a completely different question. The resources we use domestically are lower emissions, so you're actually calling for higher emissions.
We sell it on the international market, though, don't we?
Makes the country
we don't actually use the UK's
Well, actually, the Rosebank field, they've said a lot of it will be used
not
domestically.
Actually usable in UK infrastructure. But more importantly, Jacob, the reason why we need to transition.
You need to answer questions which you're trying to avoid. Using our own resources cuts emissions.
Answer me this, Jacob. Why should anyone listen to you when you're working for an organisation that's got $2.2 billion investments in oil and gas? Why would anyone believe you about anything that you say on this issue when you work for an organisation that is invested in oil and gas?
Look at the
and you yourself have said you are going to squeeze every drop of oil out of the North Sea.
I'm all in favour of doing that, because the Climate Change Committee itself said on fracking that using our own resources reduced carbon emissions. So you're actually coming on here from Just Stop Oil.
Why should anyone believe what you say?
Carbon emissions.
Why should anyone believe anything you say on this when I've just detailed how you're working for an organisation that has investments in oil and gas? And if you are fed up of being lied to, then I suggest that you go to juststopoil.org, sign up for a slow march. We're marching every day throughout November.
Are you saying the Climate Change Committee is in the pocket of big oil?
I'm saying that Well, there's a lot of complicated
So it's one thing to say don't believe me,
so
but you're saying don't believe the climate.
What I do think,
so you're saying don't believe the Climate Change Committee.
£3.5 million in what I'd like to call legalised bribes from the oil and gas lobby in 2022.
So you're saying
Rishi Sunak's own father-in-law signed a $1.5 billion deal with BP. We even have ExxonMobil have been funding the policy exchange, which wrote the Public Order Act, which is taking away all of our rights to speak out about this corruption that we all know is happening. And Jacob is facilitating. Aren't you, Jacob?
We have a lot of tax that comes from it. How do we get people about?
What will your children say?
My children
will be delighted. What are you going to say to your children when they ask you, Daddy, what did you do to avert this crisis? And you get to say to them that you went on national television and lied and lied
I've told no lies. You're not. You're just making accusations. You have no evidence for any untruth at all. You're casting aspersions with not one jot of evidence. You deny the Climate Change Committee. You want higher emissions by not using our own oil and gas.
That's a lie.
You want to stop the British economy. You want to make my children poor. You want to make the British voter cold and poor. And all you do is sit there and use the word
this
lie.
is just another misrepresentation, actually.
Can we have some facts from you? A single fact.
Just Stop Oil are calling for measures that will improve the livelihood of all of your listeners. Into home insulation, free public transport.
Not a single fact.
Energy that's 9 times cheaper.
We're now,
Facts.
We're now, I'm glad to say, on to cheese. So, we're going on to why is a rotten cheese like a strong man? To which the answer is because it's mighty. A joke from the 18th century joke book when mites in cheese were more of a problem than today. Nonetheless, we are pretty cheesed off by this unbelievable story, which will rock the fort out of our French friends' vanity, who are probably shrugging their shoulders and saying, what Levesque. Over the weekend, the World Cheese Awards were held in Norway, and a Norwegian cheese won their pasteurised blue Niddelven Blah cheese. French and English cheeses didn't seem to get a look in, not even making the top 10. I suggest they run these competitions more carefully in future. But most importantly, Vox Populi, Vox Dei, we asked the great people of Nottingham if they thought British cheese is the best, and the people have spoken.
Thanks.